doing a vlog for every book in this series so far. This one is book 3. I did a spoiler-free one for Blood and Ash, a spoiler-filled one for Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, and we're carrying on the spoiler train for Crown of Gilded Bones. So if you have not read this series, if you have not read Crown of Gilded Bones yet, then I would advise that you do not watch this video. So this is like a really anticipated book for me. I really enjoyed From Blood and Ash. I really enjoyed Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. However, I did predict that they would be 5 stars, and sadly they were actually only 4-star reads for me. So I'm kind of holding out hope that a book in this series is going to be 5 stars for me. I'm thinking this one could be the one, but at the same time I'm not incredibly optimistic. I'm thinking like we're gonna have another 4-star here. I'm not going to tell you guys what it's about because I do make the mistake of doing that quite often, but obviously if you're watching this video, I've told you it's going to be spoilers. I'm assuming you've already read up to this point in the Blood and Ash series, but we'll do a little recap of where we're up to so far in this story. So we have Poppy. She is the maiden. She found out that her life was a lie. The Ascended are bad. She found out that the man who was tasked with guarding her, who she thought was just a regular guard called Hawk, is actually Prince Castile, who's like the Prince of the Atlanteans, also known as the Dark One, and he intended to take her and trade her for his brother, who was being kept captive by the Ascended and drained of his blood. However, Hawk/Castile fell in love with Poppy. He couldn't do it. He couldn't follow through with it. We spent the entirety of the second book locked in Poppy's head as she was grappling with how she felt about Castile because he'd betrayed her. He wasn't who she thought he was. He was this big bad guy. Like, she'd been brought up to believe that the Dark One, Castile, was evil, but she was in love with him. So we finally got a turnaround on that. She married him and they traveled north, I think it's north, to the country where Castile is from, only for Poppy to be betrayed by the young Woven Becca, who she really trusted. He's only a kid, and taken to a temple where the people tried to kill her, and she grew a big massive tree and slaughtered everybody. We're thinking at this point that Poppy is descended from the gods in some kind of way, although I am 66 pages into this, so I know now that she is indeed descended from Malik, who is the king who originally created the Ascended, who are like fake vampires. They're vampires, so they're like distorted, twisted versions of vampires, I guess, with the Atlanteans being the true vampires in this story. And she has now been held captive, and they're deciding what to do with her because they can't kill her because there'll be a revolt, but also apparently she's incredibly dangerous. Castile is unconscious at this point, and I'm waiting for him to wake up and fuck shit up. The 66 pages that I've read of this so far are just incredibly fast-paced. Every book in this series just follows on from the book before, so we start off literally at the point where we ended Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. It's just really fast-paced, but the reason why these books haven't got 5 stars to me is because I do really love the romance and I love Castile. Like, he's my favorite thing about this series. But while I understand why the fantasy elements are as they are, it's because we're following Poppy, we're locked into her head, and she's an unreliable narrator, and if she doesn't know something, then we as a reader don't know it either. But I do find it to be quite lazy fantasy world building. I mean, these 66 pages I've just read, they're real fast paced. I could have done with a slower introduction back into this book because Poppy is recapping things as well, but with all this action happening, so she's not really recapping the things that I need her to. She's recapping the real basic groundwork of the series that I already know. And we've also had 2 villain monologues pretty much in 66 pages. We had the changeling guy who impersonated Becca, who's come in and told her like what exactly was going on, and now we've had Alistair come in and tell her what's going on. Shout out to the person, can't remember who it is, but I will include a little screen cap here of the comment, but shout out to the person on my Kingdom of Flesh and Fire vlog who was screaming at me about how obvious it was that Alistair is a bad guy and was the guy that Poppy remembered from when she was a kid and her parents were killed. Because like, yeah, you're absolutely right, and I was hoping that that would be a bigger reveal later into this book, but it just happened at the end of chapter 4. So yeah, that's where I'm up to with this. Haven't loved the first 66 pages so far, but I am enjoying how the magic is growing and it's becoming more fantastic fantastical as the series goes on, and I'm interested to see how exactly it's going to continue, because I've heard some pretty wild reactions about this book as well, so I'm a little bit scared. I'm a little bit scared as well, but we'll see how I get on. I just finished chapter 6. I'm only on page 90, but I'm just like, the first few chapters of this up until like the last 10-15 pages or so have been constant info dumps, and it's just a little bit information overload, as well as me generally finding it quite sloppy. And I was just feeling a little bit exasperated with this book, especially because it's like the first 100 pages, and I was like, why? And I was questioning for a second like why I loved the first 2 books in this series, why I was really excited for this one. And then Castile turned up and started disemboweling people, and Poppy looked at him and she said to Kieran, I love him. And I was like, girl, me too. Is it doing it for you? Because it's doing it for me. I'm really enjoying the murder that's going on here. I'm on page 97, right? And oh my fucking god, Castile's not about to turn her into a vampire. Is that really what's gonna happen here? She's dying, and they've said that they're gonna pull the bolt out, and everyone's like a little bit like, Castile's father's like, absolutely not, you're absolutely not doing this. And like, what could he do? What could he do right now? He could turn her into a vampire. I don't know how I feel about that, because the vampires are awful. They're just like cold, emotionless assholes. And I think he's gonna turn her into one. He fucking did it. He turned her into a vampire. Fuck's sake. I was not expecting this less than 100 pages into this book. So I'm on page 108 now, and apparently she hasn't ascended. Something else has happened to her, so I reckon like some combination of like, I don't know whether anything's going to be especially special about Castile, apart from that he's fucking flawless, to make her react a certain way to his blood, but I'm guessing it's some kind of combination between Atlantean blood and her being descended from a deity. Or is she a deity? I haven't quite got that down yet, that's made her Atlantean instead of ascended, but I guess we'll have an info dump at some point that clears that up for me. I've updated this vlog since I got my hair cut and coloured. So hello, I have purple hair now. But I'm on page 248, and I have to say I am quite bored. So I feel like this book could have really benefited from an editor. There are just endless points of pointless repetition. A perfect example is the chapter that I've just read. I think it reminds us what colour shirt Poppy's wearing 5 or 6 times throughout the thing. So we start off at the beginning of the chapter. It's where they've not just reached Jasper's home, but they're having a talk and like recovering. They get a shower. Then after the shower, she puts on, I think she says it's a cream coloured shirt actually, because that's another thing I noticed with like inconsistency. It says that she puts on a cream coloured shirt of Castile's and then goes to sleep. And then when she wakes up, he's wearing a white shirt that's exactly the same apparently as the shirt that she's wearing that she's woke up in. And there's maybe like a page or 2 pages before that, it mentions it. They have a fight with the people. I can't remember what they're called, because literally the last line that I read is what these things were that attacked them. I think they called the Unseen. And it mentions many times throughout that fight that she's wearing this shirt, and there's only 2 times in this chapter where it needed to be repeated what she's wearing. The first time when she put it on, and later during the fight when she realizes that Castile's dad's there and she's only wearing a shirt. Those are the only times in that chapter that I needed to know exactly what kind of shirt she was wearing, because as well as anything else, like I remember, because it was all across the space of 1 chapter, I don't need to be constantly told what color shirt she's wearing. A big one for me is when they're traveling to, I can't remember if it's just after they've killed Alistair or just before they've killed Alistair, but Poppy's in a monologue is talking about how she's sad that all of this stuff that's happened with her, like the stuff at the temple and all of this Alistair stuff, has overshadowed Castile coming home, because he hasn't seen his parents in years and she wanted his homecoming to be happier for him, which like, yeah, fair enough. So she's just thinking and stressing and worrying about this. And then on the page directly after that, Castile asks her, what's up. So she tells him about how she's stressing because she wishes his homecoming would have been happier because he hasn't seen his parents in a long time. And it's like, I literally just read that. One of those instances of explaining the scenario could have been cut out. It just really wasn't necessary. And then I think the only other one that I've really noticed, which could actually be relevant, and I could just be picking up on it now because I've noticed how repetitive the book is. Earlier on in the book, like Poppy became immortal when she became a vampire, but not a vampire because God knows what she's turned into now. They were talking about how she is very possibly like actually immortal now, whereas he is gonna live for a long ass time, but he will die eventually. And I feel like, I mean, it's a bit of a premature worry because they've still got, I think, a couple of thousand years together. But I get it, I get why you'd be worried about that, and it's just been brought up again. But it's not that, because I understand why that would be a recurring theme, or why it would be something that she's worried about and constantly reminded of, and like they need to get to the bottom of how long exactly she's gonna live so they can make plans for the next 2,000 years, I guess. But it keeps zoning in on the fact that like Castile will live for a long time. There's hundreds of years till he'll start to age, but he's not immortal. I'm kind of wondering if there's a point to that. Like, are we gonna revisit this at the end of the book? But it's just, I feel like that one is me being just like a little bit excessively picky, but I don't know, I'm just not having a good time, and I didn't really expect to be bored when I was reading this, and I'm really upset about it. This book, like all the books in this series as well, are really dialogue heavy. A lot of telling and not showing, usually through dialogue with the characters, but I feel like I'm noticing it in this one especially because we're getting a lot of information and development about the magic system and the fantasy elements and stuff. All of the explanation and the history and the lore and everything is coming from dialogue between the characters, and it's just a lot, you know. It's just a lot, and I'm not having a great time. But I will say I am extremely stressed right now. I'm trying to prepare for a week off work that I want to take that will be over by the time you watch this video, and I got a lot to do, and my mind is running at like 100 miles an hour, and I am struggling to focus. So like I am bored, but at the same time I'm not reading as much as I usually would because I'm just real stressed. But I'm gonna carry on putting my makeup on so I can film the videos I need to film today and get back to my book a little bit quicker. But yeah, I really hope it picks up from this point because I'm not feeling it and I'm real sad.
At this point, I think one of my biggest issues is that every single conversation, I kid you not, is about Poppy. I challenge you to find a conversation that's not about her in some way.
So I'm on at page 292. It's like 11:35. Yeah, and I'm gonna try and stay up for at least another hour and get a decent chunk of this read. But like, I listened to Kelsey's voice note earlier where she said that literally everything and every conversation is about Poppy, and I just realized that like, yes, it really is. Like, they talk about the greater good and stuff, and I think something about what is frustrating me about this plot is that they keep talking about overthrowing the Ascended. They keep talking about going to see Ian. Like, this is 3 books where Poppy's mentioning Ian constantly, and they still haven't even made the move to do anything about him. And I've now read 1,500 pages, nearly 1,600 pages of this series actually. I'm at the point now where like even the smut and Castile aren't holding my attention too much, which is real sad because Castile is my favorite part of this. And where I'm up to now, they're talking about the throne, and like if Poppy doesn't want to be queen, Castile will just abandon his people, let them all pretty much go to war, deciding who the new monarchs are going to be because his brother isn't around, and he will just do that for Poppy. And I'm all for the kind of devoted love interest thing. And I saw a thing, I think it was on TikTok the other day, that kind of pinpointed why people are attracted to villains, and it's because the good guy will sacrifice you to save the world, but the villain will sacrifice the world to save you. And it's like one of those idealistic, completely unrealistic fantasy, as in like a fantasy, not fantasy the genre, kind of things that's like not reasonable. Not logical, not healthy, but you know, one of those things you only see in romance movies and stuff. And that definitely hits the nail on the head. But at the same time, I'm like, come on, Castile, like I understand your devotion, but maybe also kind of not steer her towards the path of being queen, but like explain to her how it may not be a horrible thing. Because like right now she may not want to be queen, but if you explain to her what it entails and like how great it's been for your mum to be queen, and like yes, it's not all sunshine and roses, but there's good parts to it too, that might be the right thing to do, instead instead of just being like, oh yeah, if you don't want to be queen, that's fine, we'll bounce. I don't know, why am I having such a horrible experience reading this book? To be fair, it's not all bad, but it's just not, I'm not having a good time like I expected I would. So I'm gonna throw a theory out there, because I don't think I have yet. I've just been really excited about Castile or complaining. But I think it was mentioned a couple of chapters ago that Niktos had a consort. Nobody knows who the consort was, and he made his children the old-fashioned way. So people are thinking she's descended from King Malik, but I'm thinking that maybe she's descended from Niktos and the consort. Not sure how that's gonna work, can't lie. Struggling with some of the fantastical elements in this, just because we've only just reached a point where it has gone so fantastical, because it started off as like a pretty basic vampire story. Okay, so hey, I'm struggling. Next theory, they're in the museum and Poppy's just seen the cave cats. She said that she saw one in, was it Solace, in a cage? And Kieran and Castile are like, no, they don't exist. These ones represent Niktos's children. So I'm thinking that the Ascended, because there's this whole thing where like Isbeth could possibly be Poppy's mother. I'm guessing they have maybe one of Niktos's children captured in like cat form. Maybe, if they're like cat shifters. I don't know if I'm reaching, but it's a thought I had. Okay, so I've done my skincare, so I'm very glowy. But I just finished chapter 26, and we just got the reveal from Castile's mum that Malik must have been, I nearly called her Penny, Poppy's father, which is confusing me a little bit because, like I've already said, I am struggling with a lot of the history dumps in here, like all of the information. I thought everyone had kind of assumed that she was like many, generations. She was many generations removed from Malik if she was related to him. But if he was her father, doesn't that imply that he was around a lot longer than he was supposed to be? Like I said, I could be getting confused with that, and the chapter that I'm about to read, or at least read some of, it's like nearly 2 AM and I want to get some sleep. Yeah, it's like 5 to 2. That would maybe assume that he's still around. So like, could he be making a comeback in the series somewhere? Okay, so one of my theories has just gone right out of the window, because apparently Poppy would be Niktos's great granddaughter, which means that she is not the daughter of Niktos and a consort. It was a cool theory, but it didn't hold in the end. That is like assuming that all of this is true, which it may not be, but we're having another like history info dump here. This one's a little bit more interesting because it directly relates to the plot, and I can follow it a lot easier than all of the like gods and stuff that happened at the beginning. But yeah, we're scrapping that one. Okay, new theory coming in. We found out that Malik was entombed where the Blood Forest is, outside of Carcedonia, one of them, by the queen Ileana. I think, is Isbeth the one who's supposed to be Poppy's mother, or is it Ileana? Regardless, my new theory is that she's the daughter of Malik, and whichever queen that is, this theory was going somewhere and I've completely lost it. Oh, the big cat. The big cat, as there were two in that picture that Poppy saw, is another one of the deities, like the Niktos deities, that they're keeping in a cage for whatever reason. It could be Malik. It could be Malik. Unless the grandchildren aren't cats. Not sure on that one, but that's what we've got so far. So I'm on page 431. Ian's just turned up, and I have a couple. Do I have a couple of theories? I felt like I did, but now I can only really remember one. I will say though, because I don't think I've said yet, that it has picked up since the page like 300-ish mark, just past 300, and I am enjoying it a little bit more. It's still like super dialogue heavy, it's still like info dumping stuff, but the information is more relevant. Like the last 20-30 pages I've read are at least focused on moving the plot forward, and I think that is something that I struggle with with these books, because I feel like the first 50 to 100 pages of the Blood and Ash books, barring the first one, should actually be included at the end of the book before, because I understand it's kind of real fluid to move into the same scene that you left off in the last book, but it's always left on this really big cliffhanger, so that when you carry on, it's not as kind of impactful as if the book had the last book had continued for a little bit, then wrapped up that storyline, just so that you have a little bit more time at the beginning of the next book in the series to be reacquainted with the world and stuff. And then after that, it gets real slow. I remember in Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, it was just hundreds and hundreds of pages at wherever they were before Spess's End, I think. The place that they go to right at the end of Blood and Ash, where she stabs him in the heart, like that location. They're there for hundreds of pages and only a few days pass before they actually move on to Spess's End. So now, 400 pages in, we're actually getting to the point of this book, and Ian's just turned up. He's ascended, which is sad, I guess. It's one of those things, like, I've read 400 pages into this, I've read 1,700 pages of this series, and we finally met him after Poppy just talking about him over and over again, how she's gonna like go see him, go free him. That rhymes. Wow. He's just said that no matter how many soldiers they've got, they can't hope to defeat the army that the Queen has created. Now, based on what we've learned in this book so far, I think that the army of revenants is going to be deities, because we've already hypothesized a few chapters earlier that Poppy's birth could actually be a little bit more sinister. Like, her father could be Malik, but her mother could have been forced into it just for the product of like birthing a deity. So assuming that they've had Malik for hundreds of years, they could have created like dozens and dozens, maybe even more than that. I don't know exactly how long it's been. Well, actually, if the guy is the powerful one, pretty much an infinite number of deities. Okay, plot twist. Poppy just hugged Ian and he whispered, "Poppy, listen to me. I know the truth. Wake Niktos. Only his guards can stop the blood crown." And now I'm actually way more intrigued. So I do have to say I was a little bit disappointed with this reveal of Ian, like it being built up for so long. Like in the first book, her talking about him being her brother, and then throughout the second and the third about how she heard he's ascended but she hasn't seen him. She wants to find out. She'll kill him if she has to. I was a little bit disappointed where Vanessa just turned up and was like, "So your brother's here," and he isn't ascended. So I'm glad that the plot has thickened with that a little bit more. Okay, so once again, I've only read like a page. Poppy's telling everyone about how when they were younger, Ian used to make up stories and he was really good at acting, which makes me think that this could be like sort of a double bluff situation. But then thinking about the conversation that they had, why would Ian warn them that the Queen had revenants unless he was trying to convey a message? Like, he wouldn't just give away that the Queen had this secret army that was going to tip the scales in a war if he didn't want to give them the information. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of inclined to believe him, but then I also don't know if Jennifer L. Armentrout is setting me up for another betrayal. Kind of a theory, but I know I'm gonna get gratification like real soon, regardless of whether I'm right or not. But I'm on page 485 and Poppy's just come across the one that she meets, and is it the very first chapter of Blood and Ash, where she meets a woman in the Red Pearl, and the woman tells her to go to like this certain bedroom, and it's the bedroom that Kaz is in. Is it Willa Collins? Is it really Willa Collins? Like, honestly, I actually really like that. I appreciate that. If it is Willa Collins, I'm gonna say that it is, because she just met her here, and we already know from earlier in the book that Willa is on the Elders Council. So in the continuing saga of my endless frustration with the pacing in this series, I'm at the part now, I'm on page 534, where they've traveled to Elysium to wake Niktos and also gain his guards. They left the capital, the Atlantean capital, on page 513, and they found Niktos. They've traveled through the tunnels, under the mountains, they've killed an army of skeletons, they've awoken a dragon, and I'm on page 534. It took 21 pages, but I had like 200 pages of history info dumps throughout the middle of this. It took 200 pages for a couple of days to pass in Kingdom of Flesh and Fire before they left to go to Spess's End. And that was a really good chapter, the one that I've just read. Both of them were good. There was one chapter pretty much traveling through the mountains, and one chapter fighting a horde of skeletons and finding Niktos. Both of them were really good, but the one where they're in Elysium is really good, and I'm like, you are in the resting place of the gods. And we could have had like just so much of this book dedicated to the pursuit of finding Niktos in Elysium and like all the cool world building and stuff, and they've arrived at his temple in 2 chapters. As well as that, they have that meeting that Poppy's brother informed them about with the Queen that's going to happen at some point. I think it was in a fortnight from when they had the discussion. But there's only 100 pages left of this book, and they're talking about going to wake Niktos so that they can fight these revenants, even though they don't know what the revenants are at this point. So I don't even think in this book that they're even going to make it to that meeting with the Queen. Never mind anything else like getting an answer from the Ascended weird deciding whether they're starting a war. Obviously I'm speculating now because I haven't reached the end of the book. I don't know actually, because with the pacing in this, within 2 chapters they could be about to go to that meeting, or it could happen like midway through the next book. I don't know, but I'm just a little bit frustrated with how quick that really good chapter is. I mean, we're still in Elysium. We're about to talk to Nyctos, but I'm kind of sad that we didn't have more exploration of the initial arrival at this place. Just realized as I was about to start chapter 42, it's just jumped the entire journey back to Avamon. So all of that stuff in Elysium, all of the really cool stuff, which is those last 3 chapters have been my favorite part of the book so far, were 39 pages. No, they weren't even 39 pages. They were 29 pages. 29 pages. All of that cool stuff with Elysium. 29 pages. And I know that the prequel series is going to focus on Nyctos, so assumedly we're going to get a lot more of that area and just them as characters and all of God stuff. But still, that was actually a really good part of the story, and I feel like it should have been a lot longer. So I'm on page 560. I'm in the middle of a sexy scene. And I know I was saying earlier that even the smut has been boring me in this book, but this one in particular on the ship is a particularly good one. Cass has just bit his wrist and offered it to Poppy to drink from. And it says, I didn't think about it. Maybe later I would wonder why it felt so natural to sit up and close my mouth over the wound and what that could signify for later. But I was beyond thinking. And I've noticed earlier on in the book, I can't remember, I think it was when they were on the way to the capsule and she killed all of the, not dissenters, are they the unseen? Why am I struggling so much with the terminology in this book? I think they're the unseen. Killed all of those with her magic, and it said like maybe one day or like maybe later I would think about, etc, etc. And I'm like, that I'm pretty sure it's not something I remember from the earlier books. I mean, it's possible that that phrase was in there. I just wasn't paying attention, but I've just noticed that it's just happened again, and I'm like, what's gonna happen later? Especially this with the blood drinking, because they're off to see the Ascended now. They are actually on their way to do that, so it is gonna happen in this book. I'm a little bit concerned, I can't lie. Okay, so Malik's turned up. Malik as in Castiel's brother, not as in King Malik. So many confusing names, like the 2 queens are called Ileana and Eloana. Why? Malik and Malik, there's a reason. But Prince Malik has turned up with the Queen Ileana, and I don't think I played this message, but Kelsey sent me a message in one of our like buddy read voice note things and said that she thought that the dark one that everyone thought was Castiel, that she thought it was Malik, and it seems she might be right. So I don't think I was quite right about what a revenant was when I thought that they could maybe be deities. I'm not entirely sure what they are right now, but they rise from the dead. Carolina's alive and is a revenant. The reveals just keep coming throughout this chapter. Oh no, she's not alive. She's not alive. Ileana killed her, okay. Fair. Okay, so Ileana's just said that she's Isbeth. And I kept saying, I think throughout this video, I keep saying that I thought Isbeth was Poppy's mother because I was getting Ileana and Isbeth confused. So it's actually really funny. Ileana is indeed Isbeth. And now I can't remember who Isbeth is, but like right at the beginning of this chapter it says that she's King Malik's lover. Is she the one that he brought back to life? Yes, she's the one who started this whole thing with the vampires. She was the first one that Malik loved so much that he tried to bring her back to life. Mind blown, honestly. Wait a minute, I've also just thought that if this happened to who we now know is Isbeth, and she came back and she's not a vampire, this is pretty much the exact thing that happened with Castile and Poppy. So Poppy's whatever Isbeth is. Am I right? I'm sure I'll find out in like the next paragraph. Isbeth was ascended by a god and now so she isn't what? Sorry, calm down. Isbeth was ascended by a god and so now she is a god, which I guess would make Poppy not the same as her because Poppy is a god by birth or a goddess by birth. So I'm guessing she just can't be a vampire because she's also a god. So what I'm getting from this is that way back at the beginning of the series, when we thought that the Ascended were the good guys and the Atlanteans were the bad guys that created the vampires and the Craven, or created the Craven, I guess, because we didn't know what the vampires were. And then Castile took Poppy and told her that it was a lie. It's actually the vampires that make the Craven. But if Isbeth isn't actually a vampire, she's God, because Malik made her or ascended her, then the Atlanteans followed suit and just started doing it all willy-nilly. Then the Atlanteans are actually the bad guys because they did create vampires, because they're not gods. Oh ho, the turntable. Where's the sun? There's no proof that this son is dead. They're all saying that this son is dead, and I don't think he is. I think Poppy's got a brother out there, and I think there's a possibility we may have already met him, but he wouldn't know. Could it be Malik? It could be Malik. Malik could be the son, because he's called Malik, like Malik is, you know? Like, this is getting too confusing. Prince Malik could have been named after King Malik, because he's actually Malik and Isbeth's son, not actually, well, he's Castiel's half-brother. Wait a minute, he's not Castiel's half-brother. I was gonna say if he's Castiel's half-brother, then that would make Poppy and Castiel related. But I think there's a possibility that Malik could be both Poppy and Castiel's brother, but he wouldn't actually be Castiel's brother. He wouldn't, would he? No, he wouldn't be Castiel's brother. He would just be, but oh god, that means that she wanted to marry Poppy and Malik. Not sure how I feel about that. Anyway, that's not gonna happen. But is that a possibility? Could that be something that happens? I hate how into this I am after I've trashed most of it. Oh my god. Fuck! Isbeth just gave the order to kill. I thought she'd given the order to kill Cass when she's given the order to kill Ian, which I mean is sad for Poppy but not for me. Dodged a bullet there. We all dodged a bullet there. I have 43 pages left. I just took it by They just took Cass. Fuck my life. Fuck my life. My ASMR room just turned itself off. They've took Cass, and I'm guessing they're not going to give him back unless she gives into these demands. Just fuck this shit, honestly. I don't need the stress on a Sunday afternoon. On page 4, no, I'm on page 624, and I just found out that the son is apparently dead. Eloana's just said that Alistair killed him, which is sad because I feel like they had a real missed opportunity there to have Malik be Malik's son, but that would make him a bit of a god, wouldn't it? And I feel like people would notice that. So there was a flaw in my logic after all. Also, I do want to say as well, while I've been loving the last 50 pages of this book, the first thing, like the thing that's just happened that you last saw me talk about, was a villain monologue. And now this chapter is an Eloana monologue. So it still has the same problems. I don't think this book is particularly well constructed. I think that the pacing is awful. I think some of the world building is lazy. But Jennifer L. Armentrout can write a romance and she can write a plot twist. I will give her that. And this book may get 4 stars after all. I was leaning heavily towards a 3. We're gonna see what happens when I rate it through core pile, but it could be a 4. Hey, Malik's not her father. I reckon the cat in the cage is her father. But didn't I say, I don't even remember what's in this vlog anymore, but didn't I say at the beginning or like earlier on something about the cat? I did, but I can't remember what it is. You guys will probably have already seen it, but I don't remember. But that makes sense actually, because I was questioning when Isbeth was saying that Eloana had broken Malik. I was questioning like how Poppy had been conceived if Eloana had broken Malik. Oh my god. That ending. I will say it wasn't as dramatic as JLA normally goes for. It was epic. epic, like Poppy's monologue at the end where she's like listing off all the titles and she's like, I'm gonna burn you to the ground, bitch. I really appreciate that, really love that. But normally it ends kind of on a cliffhanger, which, I mean, the war is coming, and I'm really excited, and I hope in the next book we actually go to war and don't just spend a whole lot of time talking about it. The next book in the series could be a 5-star for me. It could. I see that potential again now. I see the potential. I didn't think this one was gonna be. But yeah, oh my god, that badassery at the end. I'm real sad about Gaston, and I hope we get him back pretty early in the next book, although I will be underwhelmed if we do. So I guess there's no pleasing me really, but I'm gonna go rate this and let you guys know my full thoughts pretty soon, probably in a couple of hours, because I got stuff I need to do, but I will be back. Good eve, welcome to the final clip of this vlog. It has been a long while and I am now cocoon because it is 11:25 p.m. but I wanted to edit everything that I had for this video so far to make sure that I wasn't repeating myself, and that being said, I don't think that there is a whole lot that I can say to you to wrap this up. I gave this book 3 stars overall, so my lowest rated so far, just because of how frustrated I was throughout the middle. I think all of these books have a pacing issue, which was especially noticeable in this one, and it isn't so much actually the pacing that was the main issue in this, although there was points throughout this video where I've highlighted like specific points where I am not a huge fan of the pacing. But the main problem for me in this was the info dumping, which is something else that is recurring throughout this series, but was especially noticeable in this one because of how much more fantastical the world is getting, with all of the gods becoming more prominent as opposed to like just background lore of the world. And so just those 200 pages near the beginning of this that was just info dumping of the gods and the history and all of that stuff, a lot of which I didn't really retain. I mean, I did subconsciously retain some of it, but as you know, throughout this video I've been getting confused about the names of the royalty and who, like Ileana and Isbeth, and who everybody is to each other, just because the way that the information is presented is just not ideal for the level of information that you're getting. And obviously I haven't read the book that's coming out in October yet, can't remember what it's called, but the first book in the prequel series, but it's a prequel series about Nyktos and his consort, so surely we didn't need all that info dumping in here, because we're gonna get that in a lot of detail in the prequel series as it's actually happening, and then we can apply that knowledge from that book to this one and save all of that info dump. Some of the romance in here I actually found a little bit sickly, just a little bit too nauseating. I love my romance, I love my swooning and stuff, but some of it was just like a little bit on the verge of cheesy, although there was like one smut scene in particular in here that I really did enjoy. Like, my favorite thing about this book, this series so far, is Castile, and he lost his shine a little bit for me in this one because I wasn't as into the romance as much, and even the smut wasn't gripping my attention. That being said though, you saw me reacting to those last 50 pages. I ate that shit up. I loved it. Those last 50-60 pages were 5-star worthy. I loved them, and I'm so hyped for book 4. So now I'm back on the hype train for this series, and I am every single book in this series I say maybe the next book's gonna be a 5-star read for me, and you know what, maybe it is. I'm really excited for everyone to go to war. I don't really have any kind of predictions. It's really hard to predict what's coming in this series, because who knew that Poppy was gonna die less than 100 pages into this? Nobody. Because Jennifer L. Armentrout kicks off the book with 100 really fast-paced pages that turn the book in an entirely different direction, and then like continues on from there. So I'm not gonna bother really predicting stuff. You know what? Am I convinced that Malik isn't Malik's son? This is the hill I'm gonna die on. I bet all of you guys are watching this like I never even thought that. You know why you didn't think it? Because there's no reason to think it. I'm just fixating on it. Because Alistair maybe didn't kill the son. Okay, maybe the son isn't Malik, but also maybe the son is still out there. Because all we have is Eloana's word that Alistair killed the son of Malik and Isbeth. But that doesn't mean he's actually dead. Maybe he escaped, so Alistair lied. But I'm just really excited for this war and the dragons and the wolves. I'm going to save Castile. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next book, which I'm assuming is going to be out next year, which is sad considering the first 2 books were out both in 2020, but obviously she is publishing the first book in the prequel series in October, which I will be making a video for. I'm not sure if I'm going to do spoilers or non-spoilers. I imagine I'm going to go with spoilers, because even though I could do it with no spoilers, with it being the start of a new series, I feel like I'm going to kind of want to talk about how the information in that book relates to the Blood and Ash series. So yeah, there'll be a new spoilery vlog from me in October, but I gave the book 3 stars, had a lot of issues with it, loved the ending and I'm still obsessed in a really weird way. I hate that I'm obsessed with this series because I have so many criticisms when I'm reading it, but I'm still trash. So yeah, that is the end of this vlog. I hope you have enjoyed it if you've made it this far. If you guys have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. Lots of stuff in my description box, like all my social media links, etc. If you would like to follow me anywhere else, I'll see you guys in October for the whatever the book is called spoiler vlog. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.